We're ready to start. So welcome everyone to An Honest Conversation, a series of talks that I started as part of a research for an upcoming doc on the rise of anti-Semitism, but have since really kind of evolved to really try and find the answer to this age-old question of Jewish hatred, anti-Semitism. Why does it exist? Why it persists? We've been meeting with different people, Jews, non-Jews, trying to really just open this conversation up and get to the bottom of it. And with me every week, on every talk, as usual, Dr. Michael Laitman, Doctor of Biocybernetics. You wrote a PhD in philosophy and Kabbalah, author of more than 50 books translated into 18 languages, including Like a Bundle of Reeds, Why Unity and Mutual Guarantee Are the Call of the Hour. As usual, thank you, Dr. Laitman, for being with us. This is always a pleasure. And today I have really the pleasure to have here Rudy Rochman, an amazing person. We've had a couple of conversations. Fascinating young guy. I mean, you talk to him, sounds like he has the wisdom of a 50-year-old, but it's hard to believe he's not even 30. He has a fascinating history. He's traveled the world. He was born in France, moved all over the world, grew up in the U.S., recently made aliyah to Israel. And what really got me interested in Rudy, why I really wanted to bring him to this conversation is he has this kind of a straightforward approach to tackling the problem. Like, I'm going to go and talk to people. I'm going to talk to anti-Semites. I'm going to talk to people who don't like Jews. We'll try to figure it out. We'll try to understand why people don't like Jews, try to rationalize their hatred, shed some light into the into some, what sometimes appears as senseless rants, senseless anti-Semitism. So I really loved how he goes around, he tackles people with so much kindness and gentleness on campus. They have conversations, and you can see people really going through a process. So it's really fascinating. Two people, Dr. Laitman, doing this for years, but on such a kind of like a systemic level. And then Rudy, you're doing this on almost like on a one-to-one, but also you have other programs that you're doing. So I'm very happy to have you both here, and we'll get to talk about all those things. I hope we'll have enough time to cover everything. So I want to start by maybe by asking a question, just to start it up. Dr. Laitman, maybe you can tell us, who is a Jew? I know Rudy, he told me that he kind of struggled with this question since he was a very young age. There were events in his life that made him question this very idea. I think a lot of people are confused, including Jews themselves. So, who is a Jew? What is a Jew?
Well, a Jew is actually a person who relates himself to a very sublime goal, which is bringing our world to unity. Yehudi, Jew, comes from the word yichud, unity. And this is something that was established by Adam, then by Abraham, who then founded a group that he put together in ancient Mesopotamia about 3,500 years ago. And we can say that Abraham was sort of the first Jew. You could call it that way. So he was a person who was calling on everyone, telling them that the purpose of creation is to become unified. It lies in unity when all people are unified. And those who want to attract the whole of humanity towards such unity, love thy friend as thyself, as it says, they are called Jew, because they long for unity. That's pretty much it. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, we can hear you. Rudy, how do you define a Jew?
Yeah, I think first of all, thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be able to speak with you. I've seen, Lio, you've made some great content, and Dr. Laitman, you've made some amazing achievements in your life, and I've seen some of your work. And it's an amazing pleasure to be able to be here and to be able to speak with you and relate to ideas and to cross-pollinate ideas. So the way I relate to a Jew, I think what Dr. Laitman touched on was the soul of what it means to be a Jew, our purpose, who we are, what is our mission statement. But I think the same way that a soul is a part of a body, you need also the physical body to understand what that is. Growing up, I am half Ashkenaz, half Sephardic, born in France, moved to Israel, moved to America. And my entire life I've been questioning, whenever someone asks me who I am, I'm supposed to give a different answer. And one side, I'm the French kid and going to school. Then I'm the American cousin with all of my family in France. Then I'm also Israeli. Then I'm also Jewish. Then I'm also Ashkenaz. Then I'm also Sephardic. So what really am I, and what does it even mean to be a Jew? Because I also understand that the word Jew comes from Yehuda, the tribe of Judah, which was an actual person and an actual tribe. And I come from Shevet Levi, from both sides of my family. I'm Kohen from my mom and Levi from my dad, Kohen being a sub-tribe of Levi. So I started asking myself, if the word Jew is not written in the Torah, of course it is in the Megillat Esther, but it's not written in the Torah, and there's no word of Judaism. Why are we really called Jews? And I think we're using it as a synonym for Ivreim, Hebrews. We're using it as a synonym for Am Yisrael, Bnei Yisrael. We all have had different names throughout our history for many different reasons. And we're all talking about the same group of people, a physical nation that has a spiritual and deeper necessity and mission in this world to do, which is something that I very much so relate with Dr. Laitman's take. But we are the descendants of a population that came from a civilization called Judea/Israel. And Jews living all around the world, it's not only that we believe in something, because if you are an individual Jew and you reject the Torah, you reject Hashem, you don't connect to the mission of our people and ancestors and descendants, you're still a Jew. You're not more or less a Jew. Right? You might be more connected to the collective, you might be more connected to the mission, but you're still a part of this nation. So I think it's not only defined by what we believe, but it's collected into one large thing. The way I describe Judaism, first of all, an ism is a man-made thing. It's something that was created. So the way I see Judaism is a sort of portable suitcase that we created when we were displaced physically from Judea, which was the last name of our civilization. And within this suitcase, we packed in our culture, our traditions, our language, our history, our laws, our connection to a higher power, our value system, everything inside, and we passed it down the dor vador, generation to generation, with the aspiration of Shana V'Yerushalayim. One day we will come back home, revive our civilization, revive that purpose, open up this suitcase and become again who we are. So the way I see a Jew is a descendant of a nation called Yehuda, Israel, Ivreim, a nation from a physical place that belong in a physical place, that also have a mission statement and an importance to them that is not just a physical nation. There's more to it.
And are we, Dr. Laitman, are we any closer now to unpacking this suitcase, to being able to say, we're Jews, we're doing what we need to do, we are who we say we are?
אני חושב שאם אנחנו נפתח את המזוודה שלנו,
I think that if we actually open that suitcase, so to speak, we're going to find almost nothing that actually belongs to Jews. Jews originally are that group that Abraham, the patriarch, put together in ancient Mesopotamia, ancient Babylon. There was a crisis there. There was a feud among all the nations that inhabited Babylon. That's the symbolizing the story of the Tower of Babel that they wanted to build up to the skies, etc. Abraham was a Babylonian priest, and he researched the issue. And what he understood is that the problem is that the human egoism is growing within people. And so he went out and researched it and started talking to people and started explaining to people that we have to rise above and practice love thy friend as thyself, or as it is called, love covers all crimes. And that's how we can build a sustainable society. And we need to realize this method. So part of the Babylonians listened to him. The Rambam Maimonides writes that people from Babylon joined him, but the people who were there were actually representatives of all the nations of the world, almost all the nations of the world that existed back then. And so the representatives from these nations joined him, followed him, and they became what is later called the nation of Israel. Yashar, it comes from the words Yashar El, straight to God, or straight to that higher force of nature through the connections of unity and love. And since then, this group was made. So it's actually not a nationality. It doesn't come from that. It came from people who agreed on uniting in order to create such a bond between them, which is referred to as one man and one heart. And everyone, in fact, can join that kind of society. It's not a standard, regular nationality. Anyone can join that approach, that ideology, that attitude to life and to spiritual life, which is about every human being connecting to all human beings in a cordial connection, in a way that we're closing the gaps between and the differences between humans. And so since then, this group exists on the ground. And even though we're forgetting who we actually are, because we went through many different stages in our evolution, what's happening now is that the world is coming to a point where this correction of the human ego that lies within us is needed. And so all people of the world, including all those who were originally there in Babylon, everyone, all of human society has that impression. It is carved in the memory of humanity that this group can bring about unity, can bring about a better future. And so in every person from the nations of the world, there is some inexplainable feeling, deep-seated feeling that the Jews carry something. They carry some method, some secret for a better life. This is something that exists in people, and it's not something we can uproot. It is embedded in nature. And this is something that can be solved only if we ourselves begin to unlock the secret of human unity, human connection, and start practicing this kind of unity and start leading by example, showing this unity for the whole world. This is called being light unto the nations. And then others can join us, and then the whole world can start moving towards balance and correction. And all of this happens by a higher influence of nature called light that we draw. And it is called Mashiach, Messiah, because it pulls us, Moshech, from the ego to love. Look, I can add that according to this method that already exists since ancient Mesopotamia, since 3,500 years ago, there are many Kabbalistic texts writing about it, and in fact, the Torah writes about it too. It's just that it depends how we understand the Torah. Kabbalists understand the deep meaning of it, what it really says. And when you look at it from this perspective, things become very clearly. It's all written, black and white, that if that group called the people of Israel begin to unlock their function and their destiny and begin to serve that function in the system and serve all the nations of the world in that, then anti-Semitism will subside, as well as wars, etc. Otherwise, anti-Semitism will not subside, because there is this demand that keeps growing, and we are expected to unlock this method for humanity to come to a better life. And as long as we don't do it, we're preventing it. And so we have to ultimately do that, both for ourselves and for the whole world. The problem is that Jews themselves don't realize what's going on, even to the point that they're sent to concentration camps and to a Holocaust. They still don't realize what's going on here, what is actually happening. They themselves don't know. But this is why the authentic wisdom of Kabbalah begins to be revealed and exposed today, because it becomes a time where we have to start realizing this, and we have to start unlocking this method for ourselves and for the world, and reveal to everyone what is the deep cause of anti-Semitism, the root cause, and what is the process that we're going through in our time. And what we need to do, not just to get rid of anti-Semitism, not just because of that, but because we actually need to become that function of light unto the nations, to show the path towards human connection and unity. This is what's embedded in the sayings, my house shall be a house of light, of prayer for all nations, light to all nations, and so on. Please.
Rudy, feel free to jump in. I mean, I have a bunch of questions, but I don't know. I mean, you're talking to anti-Semites on campus. I wonder, is this close to the reason that they're giving for anti-Semitism? What do you get out of it, or just how do you even relate to this?
Yeah, so there's so much to unpack and to profoundly relate to what Dr. Laitman has said that I very much connect to, and I'm not surprised that a lot of people that think the same way, that connect to Kabbalah and higher purpose the same way, come to the same conclusions. And it's not just us in this generation. There have been many generations before and many generations after us. So I definitely don't think we're a nation in the Western perspective of, you were born here, you have a piece of paper, a process tree that tells you you're from this place, and thus that gives you your identity. I think we're a nation in a much deeper way. When we say translates to nation, but it's different than calling yourself American today. And you can definitely convert to Judaism and become a Jew, but it's not the same conversion as religions. Religions are just belief systems for any people. So let's say a Christian were to accept Jesus, they would be a Christian right away. And if they were to reject Jesus, they would no longer be Christian. If you want to become Muslim, you wash your ears and your elbows and your hands and your feet, and you say a prayer, and you're automatically a Muslim after accepting Muhammad. And if you don't believe in the teachings of Buddha, then you're not really a Buddhist. But yet again, in Judaism, if you don't believe in Hashem and the Torah, you're still a Jew. And in order to become a Jew, it's not just I accept Torah and I'm a Jew. You have to go through a very long and hard process of adopting an identity, adopting a history, adopting a culture, adopting a language, adopting the suffering that also comes along with being a Jew, adopting the greater aspirations and the goals of that collective. So you're really joining a nation, and we don't talk about a nation just in the physical sense, but there's also a soul that exists. In fact, the view of Judaism is a convert is a Jewish soul born in a non-Jewish body that finds their way back to Am Yisrael in any way. But I think one doesn't prevent the other. I do think that there's a singularity within every individual, and I do think that there's a singularity within the entire universe, the oneness, Hashem being one, not just one individual. We spoke about Abraham, and Abraham had a father who was selling idols. And one day, many know this story, Abraham was left to take care of that shop, and he smashed all the idols and only left one large one alive. And his father came back and was like, what's going on? What happened? And Abraham said, oh, well, this large idol smashed all the other idols. He's like, that's impossible. It's just a piece of stone. It's just a piece of wood. How can that be? He's like, well, why are you praying to it? And I think that the concept is not that God is one individual. I think the concept is that God is oneness, and that one individual is not God. Because there can't be one individual thing that is God. It's the concept of everything and everything around, which is such a divine and complex thing for human beings to understand. I mean, wrap your head around the concept that Hashem has always existed and will always exist. Now, will always exist is easier to comprehend, but has always existed throughout space and time. It's a concept that's hard for us to even be able to relate to, and we have to really get on a very deep level to get to that. And there's the concept in Kabbalah of Ein Sof. Even the amount of vast knowledge that you have, there will always be an infinite more amount of knowledge that exists out there, and we only really see one small line. So I do think that there's a greater entire body. We're all part of one, but in the body, you also have organs. right? And each organ serves a different purpose, and they have to know their purpose. They can't think they're like every other organ. They're unique, and they have to work together. And within even organs, you have cells, and each cells are unique and have to work together. So I think there's a balance between also being an individual, also being a nation that is different than other nations, an organ and body. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, again, this can go again very high up. I'm trying to understand, like, what do you see on the ground? What do you see with anti-Semites? I mean, are they talking about oneness, being of one soul, having the Jews somehow preventing them from reaching that destination? Usually, what I hear, is much more rooted in money, control, greed. Even now, I'm sorry to just kind of jump into the really, really harsh present. In the outbreak of the coronavirus, we all thought, oh, there's going to be like a little, the Jews are going to get a little breather from anti-Semitism. And in fact, was the opposite. They were singled out. Also, Jews themselves, some of them acted in such a way that even brought more attention to them. The guy, that guy hoarding masks in Borough Park. Like, what's actually, what are the anti-Semites that you're talking to are saying, and is it even close to this ideal that is described here?
I think good questions have good answers, but I think the best questions have multiple answers to them. And so this question of what is anti-Semitism, where does it come from, and how do we deal with it is not something that there's one answer to. There's several answers to it. And I think that even in my experience, later on in my life, there might be more answers that are revealed. In my opinion,
go. Finish the thought, because I want to pass it also to Dr. Laitman. So finish the thought.
Yes. So in my opinion, there are many reasons for why anti-Semitism exists. I think there's a greater metaphysical reason, which is the fact that we are an organ that is supposed to serve a purpose of bringing light into the world, and we're not serving that purpose. So just like in any body, when an organ is not functioning, a body rejects it for not functioning. And that's sort of what's happening on a greater scale. So practically,
so practically people say whatever they feel. I get it. But Dr. Laitman, to your point...
But it does stem from somewhere.
Right. So Dr. Laitman, to your point, there's only one reason, right? There's only one thing. Or do we have to now work on different levels? We have to make sure that the Jews who are in power do good things. We have to make sure that Jews in government in Israel do good things. Do we have to work with all those fronts, or just on the one thing? That's what I'm trying to get to. What's the action? Where should we focus our efforts on?
Look, our world is an integrated world. It's a globally integrated world. It's a single system. You can call it a single collective soul. What it means is that all the elements of still, vegetative, animate, and human that exist in this world they're all interconnected. They're interdependent in many intricate connections. However, only on the human level, from the still, vegetative, and animate levels, only the human level possesses a force that resists the natural, balanced connection that exists in reality. And that resistance is called the human ego. Now, it is said that the Creator says, I created the evil inclination, and I created the spice of Torah to correct it. Now, we're not using what is called Torah, or the upper light, to correct the human ego. You can also see that across the Jewish population, they're divided to many different factions, due to many different differences, a lot of feuds, etc. So we are not realizing the connection that we should be. And as a result, we're not carrying out and passing on the method for human connection for the whole world. And we also don't understand that we're doing it or not doing it. We're not seeing this. This has been forgotten from our people for many generations. And the nations of the world, too, don't understand exactly what we need to bring to the world. So in the current state, we don't understand why we are punished, and they don't understand why they hate us. However, that hatred is embedded in nature. That's why it's not going to help to try to convince them in words, because that is something that is embedded in nature. It is a force of nature that pushes us and them to all become unified into a single global system. And that's why everything that is happening now will continue to worsen and continue to escalate until we'll all begin to hear that we have nothing to do besides correcting our ego. And we, the people of Israel, have to do this and set an example for this for the whole world. And then the whole world can start moving towards this connection. Until then, we won't exactly understand why the hatred, where it comes from. We'll try to jot down all kinds of reasons. They won't understand exactly where the hatred is coming from, and they will try to relate the hatred to all kinds of reasons on the ground, that we are greedy, that we are lying, that we are confusing and manipulating everyone, all those things. The thing is, the root cause is the root, and the root solution is to move towards connection. And in that, we don't depend on anyone. We can do this. We can start moving towards this example of brotherly love. And when we do so, then it will ripple throughout the system, and the nations will realize that we are moving towards a positive connection that influences the whole world. There is no reason or way in which we can detach from this goal, from this purpose that we have. We have to do it, and as soon as possible. And otherwise, all those viruses that we just started now getting into a few months ago, this will continue to escalate to the point that it will really disrupt the fabric of human society, and we, ultimately, the people of Israel, will suffer more than everyone. Not from the virus, from the hatred that will emerge from the people of the world towards us. Please.
Yeah, so I definitely agree. I do think that there are several reasons for why anti-Semitism exists. And I think the one that both me and Dr. Laitman are touching on is the greater reason. But I think there are also smaller things that the Jewish people do that causes anti-Semitism to occur. And I think anti-Semitism is almost as a correction. When Jews lose their identity, lose their purpose, forget who they are, there's a sort of rejection to that. And anti-Semitism is basically finding the source of suffering or pain that exists within a society and blaming that on the Jews, whether that be, people looking at, Christianity and saying the Jews killed Jesus, the Black Plague, the pogroms, the economic situation in Germany, and everything, find the source of suffering and blame that on the Jews. But I think if plan B is get off of the path, get hit by anti-Semitism, come back on the path, and know who we are, the question to how do we end anti-Semitism is finding what plan A is, that we no longer need that to get back on the path. And I think what causes us to get off the path is forgetting who we are and forgetting our purpose. But if we look at things like, for example, dual loyalty, a conversation that I had with my grandmother a few years ago is, I grew up in a very strong, Jewish, proud, ethical, Jewish family. My grandparents on my mother's side were born in Algeria and Morocco. And in 1948, there was a massacre of the Jewish community in Oujda. And they fled Oujda and they fled to France. And she grew up, 20s and up in France, made her living in France with my grandfather. And she really identifies as French. Of course, for her, she's Jewish first, but she really identifies as French. And I asked her, I'm like, Grandma, why do you say that you're French? This is not your nation. This is not your history. This is not your future. This is your experience. And I'm not saying to be against that experience. I'm not saying to be anti-French, respect it, love the culture, but you have to remember who you are. And she's like, no, I'm Jewish, but I'm also French. I was like, okay, let me ask you 3 questions that I think will prove to you that you're not French. If you go to a market and you have an avocado made in France, an avocado produced in Uruguay and one produced in Israel, which one are you going to buy? She said, the one in Israel. And I was like, okay, if there's a war going on and you have to send your son to a war with France or with Israel, which one are you going to send your son to? She said, the one in Israel. I said, okay, if there's tzedakah that you need to give and you could only help one, I know you'd like to help everyone, but in this case, you could only help one. A family in Argentina that's Jewish or a non-Jewish family in Paris, of course, you'd want to help everyone, but you'd help your family first, the same way you'd help your child before a random stranger. We all need to help one another, but there's also a unit that we're a part of. You're part of a family. And she said the one that's Jewish in Argentina. I was like, you see, Grandma, in theory, you're saying that you're French, but in practice, you're not. And when everyone hears you saying that you're French, all people that are really French, they see you as a traitor. And so our experience is very much so misunderstood, I think, by the other nations, even in the way that we're.
So on that, because that's a big argument. So if all the Jews moved from, Dr. Laitman, if all the Jews moved from their countries where they reside right now, from France,
well, mentally, not physically, mentally moved to our.
Okay, so
I'm talking about a mental aliyah, not a physical one. Physical, okay. Yes, eventually every Jew should find their way to see their lives being in Israel. But what's important is being mentally in Israel. And there are people physically living in Israel today that are mentally very disconnected from Israel.
True.
So being in Israel is not the answer. Being in Israel, and eventually our goal is to make Israel the entire world, light being around the entire world.
So how do we do it? I want to connect it also to what's happening now. How this, Dr. Laitman, what's happening now in the world, this strange situation we're in, the appearance of this coronavirus, how will that help us reach that Israeli state of mind? Will it help the Jews achieve that? Will it bring the world closer to that realization? How do we? I want to get tachlis. How do we get there? How will this crisis now get us there? Help us get there?
I truly hope that it will. And if it's not going to be this crisis, it's going to be the crises that will happen later on, because they're already standing by. They're in store for us. So the goal of these crises is to shake the world, and especially shake that group called the people of Israel. It's happening in order to drive humanity towards proper human connection. This plague, this pandemic that all of humanity felt that it is standing opposite nature. And so the next blows are going to be more and more condensed and more powerful to push us towards connection. If we don't want to do it smoothly, we'll have to do it in a harsh way. But one way or another, all of humanity has to become a single unit, a single system. We exist in a time that Kabbalah refers to as the days of Messiah, meaning this is the time where we have to begin attracting that connecting force of nature. From the depths of nature, we have to start getting in touch with it so that it can connect people, so that all nations can connect above all differences, so that we can actually start practicing human unity. This is what's called "My house shall be a house of prayer for all nations," etc. It doesn't matter who was born where, who was educated how. And even us, the people of Israel, after all the exiles, together with the 10 tribes that we've lost that need to come back, and all the nations of the world, all of us need to become one globally integrated soul that includes all of humanity inside of it, and even the still vegetative and animate parts of nature. And then we'll find ourselves in a state that Kabbalah calls the final correction. And we're coming to a point where we can no longer exist the way we have existed so far. And we're going to see, even when we're going to step out of this coronavirus for a little bit, we'll see that things are not going back to normal, that we can't go back to the same kind of trade and commerce and industry and culture and all those false systems and connections that we've created across humanity. We're in a new era, and it's a very unique time that we're living in. I'm very hopeful that very, very soon, in the near future, we're going to see that nature is obligating us to be more and more internally connected, mentally connected. I'm not talking about physically closer, more than 2 meters to each other or anything of that sort. And so this is what needs to happen. So I think we need to understand the principle, the foundation of the Torah. This is what Abraham taught the people who joined him, how to become unified, how to live above the differences, and that we can, in fact, transcend the differences and all religions and all belief systems to a point where, like it is said about the higher force, it is called, again, my house is a house of prayer for all nations. That's what needs to ultimately happen. And so if we work towards that, if we do that, then at the very least, we can start explaining to those who want to hear what is the general direction of the course of human development and the correction that needs to happen. And I'm hoping that soon humanity is going to start hearing it a bit more. And if not, there's going to be some more plagues, more blows that will expose this idea to more people, and thus gradually, bit by bit, step by step, we can come closer to the public and explain the secret of correction. In all the Kabbalistic writings, in all the books of Kabbalah, this is explained. This exists there. And this needs to be shown to all.
So, Rudy, how do we do it? I mean, it seems like on a lot of levels, you guys kind of talking the same thing. I hear the way you talk to people on the street. You very much, touch on a lot of similar things. I hear what Dr. Laitman is saying, but how do we do it? The question is, I see so much resistance among Jews. Forget about anti-Semites even. Sometimes they're even actually easier to talk to. How do we do it?
Yeah, so I think we need to transcend anti-Semitism. I think we need to transcend the world that we currently live in, sort of break out of this matrix and create a better world. And I think the concept of Mashiach in a Kabbalistic perspective is not that some man is going to come and that's it, we're going to have a better day. It's more so that a generation or this collective world is able to achieve a new time, a new world, that we're able to connect and work together. It's an achievement. So the way I've always seen it is that Am Yisrael is the driver, that the land of Israel is the vehicle, the Torah is our GPS coordinates, direction where we need to go to, and the final destination that we need to help drive the car to get towards is Mashiach, a time where the world works together, where we're all connected, where the body heals itself. So we need to start healing, but I think before we even heal the world, I think we need to heal our own nation. Our own nation, our own organ has gone through traumatic experiences. There's even passed down generational trauma that we all carry from all those things, and colonization, mental and physical, of our land and of our minds that exist, that we're now in the process of decolonizing. Historically, we were 12 physical nations. Each nation had a piece of land except for the tribe of Levi, which was, was spread across all the tribes. But today, we're not physical tribes anymore. We're sort of ideological tribes. We have the left against the right, the religious against the secular. And the way I see it is that every single individual sector of Jewish Am Yisrael society, it has a truth to it. It's sort of like a puzzle piece to one larger image. So the religious sector is talking about being more connected to Hashem and to our values and to our traditions and to a higher purpose, which is a fundamental part of who we are. And the secular side is saying we need to be interconnected with the rest of the world and learn math and science, which they don't actually contradict. Like, why are they opposing one another? And you see the left, which is talking about humanity, the left in Israel, humanity and justice and liberation and rights. And the right is talking about identity and security. And again, why do these concepts contradict? And unfortunately, we're in a society right now where we're very rebellious. I look at it from an analogy perspective of a child being born. In 1948, we were reborn on our land. After a child, usually when they're born, they're pretty weak. They need a parent to take care of them. But after they grow and they reach an adolescent stage, a stage where they're very rebellious, where they're trying to figure out who they are. A child can dye their hair green or run away, scream back at their parents. And now it's kind of the stage that we exist, I think, in Am Yisrael's, chapter that we live in, where we're trying to figure out who we are. We're very rebellious. We're fighting one another. But in order to transcend that and to overcome anti-Semitism, to overcome these things, I think we need to figure out who we are, what is our purpose, what are we here to do? And once we fix this unit, be able to do it. Am Yisrael has a light. We have in each individual, we're 0.1% of the world's population. And clearly we are able to succeed in ways. And I think that's also a big part of culture. 300 years ago, we were the only population that was entirely literate, right? Most people didn't know how to read and write, but we all had bar and bat mitzvahs, so we all knew how to read and write. And because of that, we've become successful, but we need to use that light not on as individuals, but as a collective. And once we figure out, okay, now that we have Israel, what next? Is it to be like everyone else, or is there a greater purpose? And I think that's a conversation and an answer that the generation will come to. I don't think any individual has like, yes, do X, Y, Z, and that's the key. I think there are elements of things that we all know that we need to do, but we need to start shifting the generation to be able to find the holistic, greater truth.
Nice. I want to kind of bring this to a close because it seems like both of you obviously have a lot to say on it from your perspectives, and it kind of sounds like we need to have more conversation about it. We need to have more education about it. There's just no other way. There's no shortcut. I just heard the other day an interesting fact that every time the Jews had a sovereignty in Israel, it lasted 73 years, right? David, Solomon, 73 years. Then Hashmonaim, until Shlom Tzion, 73 years. And now we're entering the 73rd year of Israel. Can we break the record? So I want to ask both of you, Rudy, maybe you could say, what is your message? What is your wish to the Jewish people? If you were like all the Jews were listening to you right now, kind of like how everybody just got in their homes, we're quarantined and sort of together. Maybe now we could turn on a channel and everybody's now listening to your message. What would be your message? Short message to all the Jews who can hear us now at this crucial point in time, and then I want to hear Dr. Laitman.
Yeah. So first of all, going from number 72 to 73, 72 is a very powerful number in itself. The amount of names that Hashem has is 72. It's a multiple of 18 as well. But I think what we need to figure out is what is our next chapter, because we're not united with something greater like we were in 48 or in the past. It didn't matter if you're right, left, religious, secular, you were united behind a common thing that allowed you to overcome the struggles that you were facing with, whether it be, a macro struggle of enemies around you or a micro struggle of your situation at home. I think Israel doesn't need wars every few months in order to unite. I think we need a greater purpose in order to unite, and that these external reasons of anti-Semitism and wars in Israel and all that stuff is more so to find a way to bring us together because we haven't found our own way. And when I deal with anti-Semitism on college campuses, it's a lot of misinformation. It's a lot of people that have been taught horrible things about Israel, but I think there's a purpose to it, because through this negativity, there's actually light that is created, because it forces a lot of Jews to have to face their identity, to have these conversations, to ask themselves deeper questions. And when we look at characters of Jewish history, like Moshe Rabbeinu, one of the most enlightened individuals that we've had in history, what was the moment that he was enlightened? When he saw an Egyptian slave master strike a Jew. So through anti-Semitism came light. And even Herzl, who, yes, had his own flaws and his philosophy evolved, but played a major role in helping Am Yisrael come back to Israel. What was that moment for him? Well, the Dreyfus trials, when Dreyfus was getting tried and there was Mo Juif, death to Jews, being chanted outside just because he was a Jew, that's kind of the realization that came. So we have to understand that there's a purpose to everything in this world. And anti-Semitism, there's a purpose to it. Now, of course, we need to fight it, and through fighting it, we learn and we're able to attain more information. But in order to transcend it, we have to find two things, I think. One, who are we? What is Am Yisrael? Who are we? And what are we supposed to do? What is both our purpose in this world and the greater purpose? And I think when we start uniting people and finding that greater image, those answers will start to reveal themselves.
Thank you, Dr. Laitman. So if everybody's listening to you right now, all the Jews in Israel, maybe even the world, what would be the message now at this kind of point in time, with the crisis, with Independence Day, with everything, this opportunity? What do we need to do? How do we get to a better place?
We are in fact a representation, a collection of all nations of the world. This was our foundation, the foundation of the people of Israel. is the representatives of all the nations that existed in ancient Babylon and connected with Abraham, followed Abraham. And that's why there are so many different colors and flavors among us, and it's hard for us because we carry within us all the roots of all the nations of the world. However, the difference with us is that we have took upon ourselves the condition in the past of love thy friend as thyself. And it was the carrying out of this tenet that made us a unique nation, even though that deep within us we're built from the nations of the world. There is no such nation called the people of Israel. This is also written in the Torah. They are not counted among the nations. Written again and again. And today, even though we have this feud between us and clash between us, and we're separated and scattered, and without pressure from the nations of the world, we would never even consider being together. We would just keep running away from each other. What we need to do today is just recognize that our unity is the only thing that can bring us power, and then we'll be able to also lead the world towards unity. And this unity will ripple through the system around us, and that is in fact our purpose for existence as a group. We have to be light unto the nations in showing to humanity how human beings can in fact be unified, and by that become united with the higher force of nature, the creator, and connect with that force as well. That's the goal, and we can no longer run away from it. Either the blows that the world is now going through will teach us to do it in a harsh way, or we're going to be able to consciously run faster than these blows and move towards unity and bring all the world to a better life. That's what we're facing, and that's the only thing we actually need to say to explain. And the truth is that all of the history and geography and all of that just does a lot of confusion to people. We just need to talk about our purpose, which is unity, and showing that example of unity to the world. And deep down, the people of the world are waiting for that. They want to see us do that. They need us to do that, and they will happily accept it. And then we will actually go back to what is called Zion. Zion refers to the exit from the human ego into the illuminated world. So let's hope we'll actually do this successfully, and hopefully my young friend Rudy and myself will both work on this together. I'm inviting you, when it's possible, to come visit and maybe also watch some of our materials, some lessons, some things that maybe could be helpful in the great sacred work that you're doing. And I wish you all the best in this, and to really be.
Thank you, Dr. Laitman, Rudy. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time, in Israel's 72nd Independence Day, to be here. I'm inviting everyone to obviously like, comment, share these talks, keep having those conversations like my friend Rudy is having, and maybe we'll get to talk some more, because I feel like we're just touched on so many things. There's we can go deeper into it. So I'm looking forward to more conversation. Thank you so much, and have a great day.